steadily it rises. Public preference for Lincoln Continental as the symbol for today's luxury motoring.
Hey, it's Jason ODB, the Lincoln Addict. I'm recapping Barrett Jackson 2022 as far as the 60s Lincolns. So let's jump into it. Where we are right now is I went through a couple of others, including this previous sale of $93,500. That was, of course, for a sedan. So as we go from the lowest to the highest priced sold, we'll just kind of look through these listings. And the next one up is a 62 Lincoln Continental Convertible in black, highly desirable color. We've got the VIN listed, and you can see the sale price with the buyer fee. Again, that is per Barrett Jackson's website, $95,700. Let's look at why this car sold for this price, and was it a good deal? So when we look at this is a copy-paste breakdown, not a lot of information. As I've said, I wish there was more detail from a website perspective. Now, again, that probably falls on the seller themselves because it's up to them to submit the amount of information. Their primary client or customer is going to be someone that's physically there on site, looking at the car. Maybe he has someone check it out, and then they're going to bid on it. But as we move more and more into kind of remote situations where people are potentially bidding from home or overseas and things like that, to me, I think it's paramount to have more detail that backs up the particular car. Now, my friend John Lyman, he's also chimed in on this from Stinkin' Lincoln, one of my good buddies. He has also said he finds it utterly amazing that there's not more detailed build threads of these cars. Now, granted, some of these are often just slap some wheels on it, airbag it, and sell it. So I get that. But if it's truly a car that has had work or was taken down to bare metal and things like that, certainly in the past when I've helped sell cars, we try to tell that entire story, so to speak. But again, 430, which is standard on this car, obviously a V8 automatic trans. It does have the few things it tells us is it has Ride Tech, a fully adjustable air ride suspension. As you can see from the photo, it has a 4-link in the rear, and it has a 4-wheel disc brake setup. The Lincoln is finished in tuxedo black with a power convertible top, of course. Interior features 8-way power seat, which is standard, custom black leather with white piping and a custom sound system. So when we jump over to Barrett Jackson website, we basically see, again, $95,700. What we see is a very, very short description and not a lot of information. So we do see it's a custom convertible, and that's about it. We, of course, have this nice money shot, front 3/4 showing the top down. It is in black, so again, highly desirable. Oftentimes people ask me, do you know of a black Lincoln for sale? And I often say no, because typically people just don't want to sell them unless you find one at an auction here. What we can tell is obviously the car is airbagged. We can see the paint does look pretty good, at least from this photo, and we can see it has smoothie wheels. Now, believe it or not, in the description, they didn't even reinforce what type of wheel it is. Now, more than likely, we would guess it is a Detroit Steel Wheel Co. Shout out to Emma, Adam, and the entire team over there at Detroit Steel Wheel. We recently had Adam Janai last year on Lincoln Addict Podcast, and that was very cool. Go back, listen to that episode here on YouTube or via any podcast app. Just look up Lincoln Addict. Adam is a great guy, long-time builder, if you will, and someone that's been tied to these cars for a very long time. The top does look a little bit different in terms of the fabric, especially on top. Again, there's a couple of different options, and oftentimes, even though these cars, there's not a lot of people that like to work on them, you can often find someone in your state or your town that does tops that will install a top on these cars. I used to think when I first got into really focusing on Lincolns in the early 2000s or reading about them, that it would be hard to find someone that want to do the top on them, but that's not really the case that I found. Again, upholstery shops and different folks that do top installs I've seen throughout the country, they're like, yeah, no problem. The wiring does run through the top, and I do often say what my friend TC, aka Teresa, and Blair, John Cashman, Chris Dunn, and others will tell you, that if you do the top, if you have the top redone, it is highly recommended that you also install the new wiring that goes through it. It's basically just kind of fished up through there. There's a plug on each side. And the importance of that is it's basically, I think, about $225 to $250 for that harness. And over the course of time, you can imagine 60 years, this top going up and down, those wires are getting creased and they're getting bent and they're getting put back straight and things like that. So over the course of time, they do tend to fray and whatnot. So it is recommended that you change those. Unfortunately, we often see with a new top, there's no information about, was the wiring changed? Again, little things like that to me are big because in these cars, once the top is done, there's no easy way if you find a crack or you have a short, so to speak. You can't just go back and fish the wires through. It's not that easy. This is probably my favorite shot of any Lincoln, kind of that front three-quarter. As I've said, and I said with the last sedan that we reviewed, basically you've got the rectangle grille. So those bigger rectangles indicate, boom, right out of the gate, it's a 62. Now, very rarely you'll have guys that have changed the grille. There's a local guy here, I think he's a Russian guy, and he has a 62 with a 63 grille. And you can easily tell the early 62s, as I've said in the past, you've got the keyhole cover right here. So 61 in early production 62, maybe even a couple of months, you've got this little keyhole cover where you actually, there's a little, I have a photo somewhere, but there's a little area where you can put your finger down and kind of push it up, and then you would insert the key. That's how you can easily tell it's a 62 if you're looking kind of at a side view. So 61, 62 versus, say, a 63. But this one, again, is a 62 model, so I want to point that out. We can guess, as I said, Detroit Steel Wheel Co. There is another company. I usually don't mention them only because I don't know anything about them, but there's another company that makes a similar wheel, not out of steel. But, typically 9 times out of 10, these are Detroit Steel Wheel Co. wheels with more than likely a Diamondback tire. Now, if you're looking to get into a classic car, although Diamondback doesn't sponsor my podcast in any way, you will often find people tell you that DB tire, also known as Diamondback, are the best in the business. So I have a set of 17-inch wide white wall, the widest I can get from Diamondback. Tires are amazing. They ride great. They actually manufacture, they take the tire and they put the white wall on it. Long explanation. Maybe we'll get them on Lincoln Addict podcast here in the future, but best in the business, in my opinion. So I'd call that out. We see, again, a very great stance. I mean, if you're into custom Lincolns or you wanted something like this, semi-resto mod, obviously black, smoothie wheels, airbagged on the kit that they said. This car, I can tell, even with the watermark, I mean, it's not super low. It's probably just a normal kit. There's probably not really much modification done. And that's not a bad thing because this is the car that you could, down the road, more than likely from what I'm seeing, you could put it back to stock, so to speak. Whereas, some of the other kits to make the car lower, so this little area here between the rocker and the ground, you will see some Lincolns that sit a little bit lower. And this, I just want to call that out, that typically you can unwind stuff if that's what you want to do down the road. We can also see here the optical, I call it the optical eye. I know it's the Atronic eye. I think it is. I always say it wrong. But this is, I think the same company made this for Lincoln as they did for GM, and that's the automatic headlight dimmer. So that's really what I like to try to call it now, automatic headlight dimmer. That was a feature, and that's, if you've ever wondered, or you're new to the channel, that's what that little guy is, that little robot-looking thing right there. We can see here that it has custom kick panels. We'll see in another photo. It's kind of hard to see here. We can see the interior has been redone, as they mentioned, with the white piping. We can see it has a CD player here. I'm not a huge fan of swapping out and putting a CD player here. Why not just put it in the glove box? Maybe even just go with a Bluetooth module now, but who knows how long it's been in there. We can also see it has the little thing here, which is going to be probably the receiver for the radio. It could be GPS deal or something to that effect, but that obviously is not stock. Some of you guys could chime in. Someone had mentioned to me recently, so this used to throw me off here. I thought in some years that you only had the vanity mirror on the passenger side. I could be totally wrong, and they may have done that in different years, so someone could kind of chime in there. And again, I appreciate you guys chiming in. I'm just kind of often going at this from what I'm seeing, so I love the interaction, and I love you guys chiming in. It is an AC car, so you see the AC vents here, and we will see under the hood as well that it is an AC car. What we can see here is, again, kind of another money shot that you'll typically see. Everyone loves the suicide door, so you've got this couple steps back, and you've got the front door and the rear door. That's as wide as they open for the most part. We can see the adjustable seat here. I do often like to look in here to see if this center guy is broken off. They will often be broken. Brewer, who we've had on the podcast in the past, he makes the little guy here out of stainless. I don't know if it's the full replacement or if it's just for the little broken thing, but that one looks like it is intact. I would assume the carpet has been changed out, and you can see here the speaker pods there, and you can even see some of the lights. It looks like they changed it to a pink light here, at least what we can see in the photo. If these are Detroit steel wheel codes, these also have the beauty rings that cost a little bit extra money, and those kind of pop on there and give it that little chrome stainless look on the lip. We can see here, I often like to look to see if any of this has been painted or dyed, so to speak. It's kind of hard to tell, but again, the CD player is kind of the most thing that sticks out. I did a review recently on a 61. Was it a 61? That Chris Dunn, it was 61 that Chris Dunn had taken to a local show, and I got to hang out with him that weekend, and I talked a little bit about some of these interior trim pieces. I think there's 9, if you count the 4 doors, 5, 6, this back here, 7, 8, and then this one here, 9. There's like 9 pieces there in that kind of walnut-looking color. We can see the mats have obviously, been swapped out. Typically, it's very hard to find the original mats. And the seatbelts look good. I'm assuming, and again, you guys could chime in on 62. I forget if it was even an option in the front. It may have been, certainly not in the back. But more than likely, these are aftermarket, which these actually look fine. Again, I'm more about safety. I'd rather have something than nothing. You got your front 3/4 shot there, the rear 3/4 shot, so you can again see that this isn't a super low Lincoln, even though it looks low. From an air suspension fiend or fanatic like me, this car could go a little bit lower, but what that tells us is it probably wasn't really kind of cut up in any way, and it would make it, again, easy to undo. The 61 2s and 3s have that very unique kind of back area here, which everything looks good there. And we get to the engine bay. So what I would say here is obviously the chrome. This isn't going to be for everyone. As much as I love chrome, this is something I would personally swap out, maybe powder coat it black or just have it painted. But someone had this chromed at some point. I think I also reviewed this a little bit as we were doing like a preview to Barrett Jackson 2023 Scottsdale. And I remember, this has the 2 ports, so we see the 2 screws here. It has the air condition. Again, it doesn't even say if the AC works. I mean, those are things that just drive me nuts. Certainly, if you were there, I get it. You could argue, hey, I was on site. We started the car. I asked the owner 50 million questions. What's the chance the owner's even going to be by the car, though? Think about that. Some of these guys they drop the cars off. They're not even there. Again, I would rather a listing. I mean, in the future, if you're looking to sell through Barrett Jackson, provide them as much detail as you can. Again, we don't even know if the AC works in this. This could just be all, nice and clean and painted, and it may not even work. So we don't even know. We do see, though, that it has the dual master cylinder, so that's great. You guys have heard me talk about the single in the past, which the JFK car that I recently reviewed, of course, that had the single as well. I do recall going over this one, again, as a preview, and we can see like a lot of little things here going on with, a different type of solenoid, it looks like, a bunch of wiring. Me personally, I would go back and change all this stuff. Not really nailing this. I have a little bit more work to do on my 64 to run some Tech Flex, that nice little kind of sheathing, I guess I call it, around the wires. But, some of this wire loom and stuff like that, I would kind of clean all this up. But for the most part, I mean, this engine bay looks really clean. So it's hard to say through just the photos, like, did they just have someone detail this up over a weekend, or, was this car always kept this clean? Those are things you just never know until, you get in there and start looking around. A nice kind of overhead shot there, maybe someone kind of standing up with the camera in the air a little bit. But I like this shot. It kind of just shows the four seats there. So that's about it on this one. Now, like I said, I wish there was more detail. It sold for $95,700. So if we jump back over here, what I wanted to do is just say, hey, was this a good deal? So let's say a nice 60s Lincoln Continental convertible right now is going to run you, if you can find one, 50 to 80 grand, right? It depends. You can find a really nice car, or let's say you find something a little bit more scaled down. Let's just say you get one for 50 grand. That's a solid car. And then you go, hey, I want to customize it. I mean, the air suspension, listen, depending on where you live and depending on how much you do yourself or how much you research, it's going to cost you 5 to 15 grand. And I know that sounds like a lot. There are guys out there that could do it for less. I mean, you could run 1/4-inch lines, you could run manual valves, you could airbag it on the front suspension. You can make an at-home kit. You could do all that. But if you buy a kit and you have your air management, which I've talked about in a series prior, sorry about that, which I've talked about in a series prior here on the YouTube channel, with your air management, whether you run AccuAir and things like that, all of that stuff's going to cost you. And then if you are not a do-it-yourself guy or lady, you're going to have a shop that's going to have to, have the labor to install it. So again, you could throw a dart at a dartboard and you could hit anywhere from 5 to 15 grand, right? So if you've got a $50,000 vert, if you got a good deal, and that's if it's running, driving, stopping, all that stuff. And then let's say you put 10, which is in the middle, that's going to get you to 60 grand. You're going to have, more than likely, my guess right now, Detroit Steel Wheel Co. I do believe it takes a while to get those wheels, but let's just say they're 500 to 750 a piece, right? Let's say 2 grand, and then you add in, 4-wheel disc brakes, you add in tires. I mean, you're easily going to go from 50 to 60. Down here, you usually get, to almost 70 grand. So, those are some things I like to think about and say, hey, did someone get a good deal? I think they did. It's a black car. It's airbag. Someone's going to drive it and have fun. There's a few things. Obviously, you might want to change the fuel pump. You might want to kind of redo some of that wiring. What we don't know is, how does the deck lid look? What does it look like inside? The quarters in the back. Is there any rust? Does the AC work? All of those things. Was the timing gear done? All of that stuff right there is the most important, right? That stuff is the key. Oftentimes you're going to want to get this car and you're going to want to drive it. But if you buy a $40,000, $50,000 car, maybe you get lucky and you get a $30,000 vert. And it has a lot of work, and you got to do all that other stuff to get to the point that you've got a nice running, driving, top working car. Then you go and do all your eye candy, all your fun stuff. You could easily see where a $40,000 to $50,000 car with all of your normal expenses, if you can find someone to work on it where you live, and then you add in all this fun stuff that I talked about, you could easily, people don't believe me, you can easily get to 100 grand in no time. And again, that's if you can find someone to work on it. Oftentimes people they scratch their head and say, well, why are these guys ripping the engines out and they're ripping the air condition out? They're going with vintage air and resto mod air. It's because oftentimes, I mean, sure, they might have the money and they might want to upgrade it, and that's perfectly cool. But if they can't find anyone to get the, automatic temperature control working, or they can't find someone to fix the AC, or someone that knows how to change all the vacuum lines, or you don't want to do it yourself, you often have people that say, just rip out the old, put in the new, and it's more modern. So I don't say, I'm not saying I 100% agree with that. It's just what people do. So I like to kind of put that perspective out there. So if you like what we're doing here, leave a comment. Please thumbs up as well. Consider subscribing. Also, check out LincolnAddict.com. You can find ways to listen to Lincoln Addict podcast, and you can pick up some merch. Check it out, LincolnAddict.com. Certainly appreciate all the support. Thank you guys for checking it out and watching till the end. We out of here. Stay on the rise. Peace.